American wilderness, North Carolina's Pisgah National Forest, New York's Adirondack Mountains, Idaho's northern forests, New Hampshire's White Mountain National Forest, California's Tahoe National Forest, Colorado's Black Canyon of the Gunnison, and Pennsylvania's Allegheny National Forest stretches vast and untamed, a realm of shadowed pines, jagged peaks, and silent hollows where the air hums with the weight of forgotten centuries. For RV campers like Eli Foster, Milo Ridley, Kent Walker, Caleb Renfield, Curtis Mallery, and one unnamed soul, these forests promised refuge. A sanctuary from lost jobs, urban clamor, and the quiet ache of personal loss. Their RVs, steel cocoons on wheels, rolled into remote clearings, their engines humming a promise of peace amid the rustle of leaves, the scent of damp earth, and the distant calls of wildlife. But beneath the stillness stirred something else. A presence, primal and ravenous, that left behind deep gouges in metal, tracks too vast for bears, and a silence that turned predatory. From Eli's desperate flight through Pisgah to Curtis's scarred retreat from the Gunnison, their stories converge into a tapestry of dread. A hulking, twisted figure, sometimes fur-clad with a boar's snout, sometimes scaly with a reptilian jaw, hunting not just flesh but the raw terror pulsing beneath it. This is the chronicle of how the open road became a snare, how tangible evidence, shredded campsites, blood-streaked earth, and whispered warnings bears witness to a horror too real to bury, too vast to escape. The first tremors, a sanctuary unraveled. Eli Foster was 38 in the summer of 2019, a software engineer whose spirit had been ground down by endless lines of code and the sterile glow of fluorescent lights in a Raleigh office tower. The consulting firm's abrupt downsizing had left him jobless, his savings dwindling, his confidence frayed. His wife Maggie, ever perceptive, saw the strain in his hunched shoulders and the shadows beneath his eyes. "Take a break," she said one evening, her voice soft but firm as she stirred a pot of soup on the stove. "Go on one of those RV trips you've always talked about. Reconnect with nature. You need it." Eli nodded, the idea taking root like a lifeline. He rented a 2012 Winnebago, its beige interior faded but functional, and packed it with essentials. Canned beans, a dented coffee pot, a fishing rod with a cracked handle, a dog-eared copy of The Old Man and the Sea. The Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina beckoned, their winding roads a ribbon of asphalt flanked by pines that swayed in the breeze, their needles glinting in the late June sun. The first days were a balm. Eli drove slowly, windows down, the air sharp with pine and earth, stopping at scenic overlooks to sip lukewarm coffee and watch hawks circle above granite peaks. By the third day, he stumbled upon a lesser-known campground in Pisgah National Forest, found on an obscure online forum, a hidden gem tucked deep within the wilderness, miles from the nearest town. The site was nearly deserted, save for an older couple in a battered Winnebago at the lot's far end, its paint peeling like old skin. Eli waved as he parked, but their faces, tight, pale, eyes darting, barely acknowledged him. Their expressions locked in something akin to dread. He shrugged it off, chalking it up to the antisocial quirks of seasoned campers, and set up his site. A folding chair by the RV's door, a small fire pit ringed with stones, a tarp strung between trees to shield against the occasional drizzle. The woods around the campground were dense, their canopy a lattice of green that filtered sunlight into shifting, dappled pools on the forest floor. Late that afternoon, restless and eager to stretch his legs, Eli followed an overgrown path, boots crunching on pine needles and snapping the occasional twig. The air grew heavier the deeper he went, thick with the scent of resin and damp soil, a far cry from the air-conditioned sterility he'd fled. The path meandered through towering trees, their trunks rough and moss-streaked, until it opened to a small, secluded lake. Its surface was a perfect mirror, reflecting the dense canopy above, unbroken by even the faintest ripple. The stillness was hypnotic, almost reverent, and Eli felt a rare calm settle over him as he unpacked his fishing rod, the reel squeaking faintly from disuse. He was about to cast when his eyes caught something odd. Deep scratches gouged into the trunks of nearby pines, parallel lines, precise and evenly spaced, too clean and deliberate for a bear or mountain lion. A shiver ran through him, prickling his scalp, but he pushed it aside with a forced laugh. "Some big cat marking its turf," he muttered, though the cut's surgical neatness gnawed at his rationalization. He fished for hours, the rhythmic casting of his line. Plink, whir, splash, soothing his frayed nerves, the lake yielding a small trout he released back into the glassy depths. Dusk crept in, the sky bruising purple, and with it came a shift. The forest's chorus of birdsong and insect hum fell silent, replaced by an oppressive void that pressed against his ears. The hairs on his neck stood up as he packed his gear, the rod clattering against his chair in his haste. The trees, once majestic and calming, loomed like silent sentinels, their twisted branches clawing at the darkening sky. He felt eyes unseen, unrelenting, boring into his back, and his pace quickened, boots pounding the path, heart thudding in his chest until he was nearly jogging. Breaking into the campground clearing, he stopped dead. There, in the center, directly before his RV, stood a creature. At first, he mistook it for a large dog, perhaps a stray wolf, but as his eyes adjusted, its wrongness sank in. It was hunched, its back arched in a way that defied anatomy, its limbs too long and slender, joints bending at grotesque angles. Its skin was a sickly, mottled gray, stretched taut over bones that jutted unnaturally, and its legs, thin, elongated, reminiscent of a deer's, ended in claws where hooves should have been. Its head was slightly too large, a snout jutting out like a wild boar's, though no animal Eli knew had a jaw that could gape so wide, revealing a row of jagged, glinting teeth. It turned slowly toward him, nostrils flaring as if scenting the fear radiating off him in waves. His instincts screamed to run, but his legs were lead, rooted by terror. The creature tilted its head, almost curiously, and let out a low chuff, a sound that reverberated through the asphalt beneath his feet, primal and guttural. Took a step forward, then another, claws clicking with deliberate menace. Something snapped in Eli. He bolted, sprinting the last yards to the RV, hands fumbling with the keys, dropping them once, twice, the metal clinking against the ground as his breath came in ragged gasps. He snatched them up, dove inside, and slammed the door just as the creature reached it, the RV shuddering as it threw its weight against the frame, claws scraping metal with a screech that set his teeth on edge. Scrambling to the driver's seat, he jammed the keys into the ignition, the engine roaring to life with a reluctant growl. He floored the gas, swerving wildly out of the campground, tires squealing as he tore down the dirt road. In the rearview mirror, it gave chase, its elongated limbs carrying it at an unnatural speed, a gray blur against the dark trees. Branches whipped the RV's sides as he pushed it over rough terrain, heart pounding, until the creature faded from sight. He didn't stop until he hit a main road, knuckles white on the wheel, body trembling so badly he could barely dial Maggie's number. "I'm sick," he mumbled, unable to voice the truth, the phone slipping in his sweat-slick hands. Days later, a news report chilled him. 2 hikers found mauled in Pisgah, their campsite scarred with scratches like those he'd seen. The anchor's bare theory a hollow lie. Milo Ridley's tale began in that same summer of 2019. A wiry, independent contractor in his early 40s who'd spent years drifting from job to job, state to state, finding solace in the solitude of his RV. A battered but reliable rig that smelled faintly of motor oil and pine air freshener. After a grueling stint in Boise, he craved the isolation of northern Idaho's dense forests, rolling his mobile haven into a clearing off an old logging road. Towering pines stretched skyward, their branches interlocking to form a green tunnel over the rutted path, the air thick with the musk of earth and needle decay. The first nights were a balm. Crackling campfires cast flickering shadows across the clearing. A cold beer sweated in his hand, and the distant hoots of an owl lulled him into a rare peace. He'd sit in a folding chair, boots propped on a log, watching the flames dance, the wilderness a quiet companion to his restless soul. On the third night, that peace shattered. A rhythmic thudding broke the stillness, low and steady, echoing from the woods like the heartbeat of something massive. Milo tilted his head, straining to place it, perhaps a deer foraging, or the wind toppling a branch. But its deliberation set his teeth on edge. He shrugged it off, chalking it up to imagination fueled by isolation, and turned in, the RV's thin mattress creaking under his weight. Morning light revealed a chilling truth. Massive tracks pressed into the soft dirt just beyond the clearing, bear-like but larger, claws too long and sharp, sunk deep as if whatever made them weighed far more than any grizzly. His stomach churned, but he clung to reason, muttering, "Freakishly big bear." As he traced the prints with a trembling finger, the air felt heavier, the forest's quiet now a watchful hush, though his shotgun, propped by the RV's door, offered a fragile comfort. By the fourth night, the thudding returned, closer, insistent, shaking the RV's frame with each pulse. Milo grabbed his flashlight and shotgun, stepping into the chilly air, breath fogging in the firelight's dying glow. The beam cut through the darkness, sweeping over pines and underbrush, revealing nothing but shadows that danced with the wind. Then, at the clearing's edge, a figure crouched, hulking massive, its matted fur glistening with dew, limbs twisted and too long, joints bending unnaturally. Its head was disproportionate, a snout stretched like a wolf's but pulled too far forward, eyes glinting as it studied him with silent intent. Milo froze, the shotgun a toy in his hands against its bulk, its stillness more terrifying than any charge. Without warning, it darted into the trees, its speed defying its size, a blur of fur and menace swallowed by the dark. He stumbled back, locking himself in, shotgun clutched through a sleepless night, ears straining for every creak, every rustle. At dawn, he emerged to a nightmare. Fresh tracks circled the RV, some pressed into the dirt while he'd cowered inside, a deliberate ring of predation. Heart pounding, he threw his gear into the RV, desperate to flee, when a sight stopped him cold on the road out. A man's body, torn apart, limbs scattered like a child's discarded toys, blood soaking the earth. Tracks identical to those around his campsite trailed from the carnage back into the forest, fresh and deep. Milo slammed on the brakes, hands trembling, then floored it to a gas station, where the attendant's pale face and the sheriff's strained calm confirmed the horror. The report said bear, but Milo knew better, fleeing Idaho with gouges on his RV and a dread that clung like damp rot. The Watcher's breath, a predator's game. Kent Walker, a San Francisco mechanic in his mid-30s, felt the weight of his father's death in 2020. A quiet man who'd loved the outdoors, his ashes scattered in the Sierra Nevada. Seeking to honor him, Kent patched up a 1982 Winnebago Brave, new tires, sealed leaks, a fresh coat of forest green, and aimed for Tahoe National Forest, a place his father had often praised but never shared with him. The drive was smooth, the RV's engine a steady hum as he wound through mountain passes, the sun filtering through dense pines to cast flickering shadows on the asphalt. By mid-afternoon, he found a secluded spot by a clear lake, its waters a mirror of the towering trees, the air cool with pine and damp earth. He parked, set up a folding chair, and built a fire pit, the crackle of kindling a soothing counterpoint to the lake's gentle lapping. The first day was a balm to his grief. He hiked along the shore, gathering firewood, twigs snapping underfoot, the occasional pine cone rolling into the underbrush, then cooked chili over the flames, its smoky tang mingling with the crisp air. As dusk settled, he sipped a beer, watching stars pierce the canopy, the vast silence wrapping him in a peace he hadn't felt since his father's passing. Then came a low rumble, deep and resonant, vibrating through the forest floor, too primal for wind or thunder. Kent's pulse quickened, but curiosity overrode fear. Grabbing his father's old hunting knife, its blade nicked from years of use and a flashlight, he ventured into the woods, the beam slicing through the dark to reveal twisted branches and moss-draped trunks. 50 yards out, he stumbled into a muddy clearing, the ground scarred with deep grooves, wide, jagged, as if clawed by something massive. Nearby trees bore long streaks, bark stripped away with brutal precision, and a footprint loomed in the mud, 3 times a human's size, clawed toes sunk deep, radiating menace. The air thickened, heavy with the musk of wet soil and something fouler, like rot carried on the breeze. Kent's breath hitched, the urge to flee warring with a fascination rooted in his father's tales of the wild. The forest shifted around him, the path he'd taken twisting, trees closing ranks, their branches interlocking to block the sky. Heavy breathing echoed from the shadows, rhythmic thuds pacing just beyond his light. A presence circling, unseen but palpable. He ran, flashlight bouncing, boots slipping on damp earth, the breathing growing louder, the thuds shaking the ground. Breaking into the campsite, he doused the fire with a bucket of lake water, steam hissing as embers died, hoping darkness would shield him. Inside the RV, he locked the door, hands trembling as he gripped the knife, listening to the night. The vehicle shuddered violently, tilting sideways as something rammed it, claws gouging metal with a screech that pierced his skull. Another blow rocked it, and Kent scrambled to the driver's seat, fumbling keys into the ignition. Headlights flared, catching a glimpse. 12 feet tall, matted fur dripping with dew, a face blending human malice with animal hunger, eyes glinting with cold intent. He floored the gas, the RV lurching forward, tires spinning in mud before finding traction, the creature's claws scraping as it lunged. Kent sped down the dirt road, headlights bouncing, not stopping until the forest receded and a gas station's neon glow promised safety. The RV's shredded side a testament to his escape. Caleb Renfield, a pragmatic mechanic from Charleston, sought solitude in Pisgah National Forest in the spring of 2021. His RV, an old but reliable rig, parked in a quiet clearing under a dense canopy of pines and oaks. A history buff with a love for Hemingway, he spent the day with To Have and Have Not, its worn pages a welcome escape as he lounged by a small fire, the forest's rhythmic sounds, birdsong, rustling leaves, lulling him into peace. Dusk brought an unnatural silence, the usual nightfall quiet replaced by a void that made his skin crawl. The fire's crackle the only sound in a world holding its breath. A low rumble rolled from the woods, distorted and wrong, growing closer until the ground trembled faintly beneath his boots. Caleb stood, flashlight in hand, calling, "Who's there?" His voice echoing unanswered through the trees. Sweeping the beam across the underbrush, he saw nothing but shadows dancing with the breeze, though the unease clung like damp cloth. He doused the fire, locking himself in the RV, but sleep eluded him, every creak and rustle amplifying his tension. A loud crash jolted him awake near midnight, heart pounding as he flung open the door, flashlight piercing the moonlit clearing. The fire pit was scattered, stones tossed with impossible force, and at the edge stood a figure, hulking, matted fur, a boar-like snout twisted with tusks, a mouth too wide with jagged teeth glinting silver. It watched him, breath steaming, then charged, slamming the RV with a force that rocked it on its axles. Caleb dove inside, locking the door as it rammed again, claws scraping metal. The assault stopped, the rumble receding, leaving dents and scratches as proof of its hunger. A predator's game he'd barely survived. The Hollow's hunger, survival's edge. Curtis Malleary, a Denver graphic designer in his late 30s, craved peace in Colorado's Black Canyon of the Gunnison in the fall of 2022. His RV nestled among towering pines, the canyon's jagged peaks clawing at a sky bruised with dusk. The first night was serene. He built a roaring fire, its warmth cutting the chill, cracked a beer, and leaned back in a folding chair, the forest alive with crickets and rustling leaves. The solitude was a balm after months of deadlines, the quiet a stark contrast to Denver's urban hum. Then came a faint thudding, low, rhythmic, barely audible over the flames, like something heavy striking the earth. Curtis sat up, straining to listen, but it stopped, leaving only the fire's crackle and an unease he couldn't shake. The sound returned, closer, louder, thump, 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 moving through the forest toward him. Heart racing, he grabbed his flashlight, its beam slicing through the dark, landing on trees and underbrush but revealing nothing. "Hello?" he called, voice too loud in the stillness, unanswered save for the relentless thudding. A flash of pale movement flickered at the light's edge, massive, slipping between pines. Too big for a deer, too fast for a bear. A crash erupted, birds screeching skyward, and a creature emerged at the firelight's fringe. Over 7 feet, muscular yet hunched, its translucent skin stretched over a skeletal face, jagged teeth bared, claws gleaming like steel. It slithered forward, limbs unnaturally fluid, studying him with unseen eyes, its presence a cold wave of terror. Curtis bolted, legs pumping, the creature's thudding pursuit shaking the ground behind him. He reached the RV, yanking the door open and diving inside, hands shaking as he locked it. The vehicle rocked as it circled, its presence a weight through the thin walls, claws scraping faintly. Hours passed in silence. Curtis huddled on the floor, kitchen knife clutched, until dawn revealed an empty campsite. No tracks, no sign, but a lingering dread that it would return. He packed and fled, the forest's beauty now a mask for its hunger. The unnamed narrator, a Vermont hardware store owner in his early 40s, took his golden retriever buddy to Pennsylvania's Allegheny National Forest in the summer of 2023, seeking solitude by a stream. Days of hiking and fishing were blissful, the RV a cozy refuge, Buddy's tail thumping lazily by the fire. Then Buddy's growls broke the quiet, hackles raised at the dark, his ears pinned to an unseen threat. Massive, reptilian tracks circled the campsite, clawed, deep, unlike any bears, discovered at dawn. Rain-soaked night brought scratching slow, deliberate, against the RV, growing louder, more insistent. Heart-pounding, the narrator grabbed his Army-issue combat knife, peering through a crack in the door. A hulking shape loomed in the storm, scaly, ridged, its spine armored like a prehistoric beast, its alligator-like jaw wide with sharp teeth, eyes glinting with cold intelligence. It slammed the RV, claws gouging metal, rocking it as Buddy barked wildly. The assault persisted, hours of circling, scratching, testing, until it receded with the rain, leaving a shredded campsite and a vow to abandon the wild forever. The evidence endures, a truth too deep. The wilderness guards its hollows, its roads a snare for these 6, called Wendigo, Skinwalker, Hollow Beast, Ridge Stalker, by whispered tales. Evidence scars the earth. Gouged metal, massive tracks, shredded campsites, blood trails vanishing into shadow. Officials cry bear, but the precision chills. A predator, intelligent and ravenous, hunting fear as much as flesh. Is it a relic of evolution, a cursed spirit, or a nightmare birthed in the wild's depths? Reader, would you roll your RV into these woods, trusting steel against its claws? Or does the first thud turn you back? Could you face its gaze, or leave its hunger to the dark? The forbidden excavation unearths this terror, daring you to tread where the wild still breathes.